When most people say they want to be wealthy and happy, what they're really describing is a picture that society has handed to them. They think wealth is a certain number in the bank or a certain kind of car in the driveway or the freedom to buy whatever they want whenever they want it. And they think happiness is simply the absence of problems or a constant state of feeling good. But if you chase those shallow definitions, you'll spend your whole life running and never arrive. Because wealth and happiness are not found in what the world defines. They're found in what you decide they mean for you. Let's start with wealth. If you believe wealth is just money, you'll never feel wealthy enough. Why? Because no matter how much you earn, there's always someone with more. You'll buy one house and then see someone with three. You'll drive one luxury car and then notice someone flying in their private jet. The pursuit never ends because comparison never ends. But true wealth is not about accumulation. It's about freedom. Wealth is the ability to live life on your terms, to buy back your time, to make choices not out of desperation, but out of intention. If you have millions in the bank but no freedom, you are not wealthy. You're trapped. And if you have less than you'd like, but you've created the margin to control your time and live with purpose, then you're already experiencing a wealth most people never touch. And what about happiness? Most people make the mistake of thinking happiness is a destination. They say, I'll be happy when I make six figures. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I retire. But happiness is not waiting for you in the future. It is something you must cultivate in the present. Philosophers for centuries have reminded us that happiness is a state of being, not a state of having. If your happiness depends on circumstances lining up perfectly, you'll always be at the mercy of things you cannot control. But if your happiness comes from within, gratitude for what you already have, joy in your daily growth, meaning in the way you show up for life, then no one can take it from you. This is why redefining both is so important. Because the truth is wealth without happiness is misery, and happiness without wealth is limitation. A rich man who hates his life is poor, and a happy man who cannot pay his bills is in chains. To truly live, you must hold both together. Wealth is freedom, happiness is fulfillment. Now here's the deeper truth. Redefining wealth and happiness is not just about changing the dictionary in your head, it's about changing the operating system in your life. If you think wealth is just money, you'll make decisions that sacrifice your health, your family, your peace of mind, all in the name of chasing dollars. If you think happiness is just pleasure, you'll waste your life seeking comfort, avoiding challenges, numbing yourself with entertainment while missing the deeper satisfaction that only comes from growth and purpose. But if you redefine wealth as freedom, you'll build systems that buy back your time, you'll create businesses that run without you, you'll prioritize assets over liabilities. And if you redefine happiness as peace within, you'll stop waiting for someday, you'll stop tying your joy to outcomes, and you'll start building a life that feels rich now, not just later. Think about it this way, money is a magnifier. If you are unhappy when you are broke, money will not make you happy when you are rich. It will just magnify your discontent. If you are empty when you have little, you will be emptier when you have much. On the other hand, if you cultivate happiness now, money will amplify that joy. If you practice gratitude now, wealth will give you more to be grateful for. The external expands whatever is already internal. That's why the redefinition must happen first. And here's the challenge. Culture won't help you do this. Culture will tell you wealth is flexing what you own and happiness is chasing the next thrill. But culture is wrong. The people who live by those rules burn out, break down, or live with regrets. If you want to be wealthy and happy, you must decide for yourself, what does wealth mean to me? What does happiness mean to me? And then live by that decision with conviction, even if the world laughs at you. I want to leave you with this thought. If you don't define wealth and happiness for yourself, someone else will. And if you let someone else define it, you'll spend your whole life climbing a ladder, only to discover it's leaning against the wrong wall. Redefine it, choose it, love it, because only then will you have the power to create a life that is both prosperous and fulfilling. If you want to be wealthy and happy, after redefining what those words really mean, the next step is mastering the inner game of prosperity. Because let's be honest, before money ever shows up in your bank account, it first shows up in your belief system. Before you ever experience outer success, you must develop inner alignment. Wealth is not created from the outside in, it's created from the inside out. Here's the mistake most people make. They think wealth is about working harder, doing more, hustling longer hours. They treat prosperity like it's purely a physical equation. If I work more, I will earn more. And while effort matters, it is not the deciding factor. How many people do you know who work tirelessly, yet never escape paycheck to paycheck? It's not a lack of effort, it's a lack of inner mastery. They haven't addressed the beliefs that keep them in cycles of scarcity, self-sabotage, and limitation. Your mind is the thermostat of your life. If your financial thermostat is set at just enough, then no matter how much you earn, you will unconsciously bring yourself back down to that level. You'll overspend, you'll undercharge, or you'll hesitate to seize opportunities because your identity is not calibrated for more. The same is true for happiness. If your inner thermostat is set to frustration, doubt, or negativity, then even when life gives you reasons to be grateful, you'll find reasons to be miserable. Until you upgrade the inner thermostat, the outer results will never change. This is where the psychological and philosophical depth of prosperity really comes in. Think about it. Money is neutral. A $100 bill in my hand and a $100 bill in your hand have the same value on paper. But why is it that one person can take that 100 and multiply it while another spends it recklessly and has nothing to show for it? The difference isn't in the money, it's in the mindset. Money flows to the person who believes they deserve it, who has the discipline to manage it and the vision to grow it. And it's the same with happiness. Two people can live through the same circumstances and experience entirely different realities. One person loses a job and spirals in despair. Another loses a job and sees it as the spark for reinvention. One person experiences hardship and calls life unfair. Another sees hardship as training for their next level. Happiness is not determined by events, but by interpretations. And interpretations come from the inner game. So what does mastering the inner game look like? It looks like confronting your beliefs about money. If deep down you believe money is evil, or that you don't deserve it, or that people like you never get wealthy, then no strategy in the world will change your financial reality. You will always find a way to block the blessing. But when you shift your belief to see money as a tool, as a magnifier, as a resource you are worthy of managing, then opportunities that were once invisible suddenly come into view. It also looks like practicing gratitude as a daily discipline. Gratitude doesn't just make you happier, it makes you wealthier. Because gratitude trains your mind to focus on abundance instead of lack. And when you focus on abundance, you start to notice more opportunities, more ideas, more connections. Gratitude is your perception to the frequency of wealth. It reminds you that prosperity is not something you're waiting for in the future. It's something you can practice right now, even with what you already have. And perhaps the deepest part of the inner game is discipline. Not discipline as punishment, but discipline as alignment. Discipline says, I know what I want, I know who I'm becoming, and I will not betray myself by acting out of fear or laziness. Discipline allows you to hold joy and responsibility in the same hand. Discipline is the bridge between the wealth you imagine and the wealth you experience. Without it, happiness becomes fleeting and wealth slips through your fingers. With it, both happiness and wealth become sustainable. Here's the paradox. Most people think mastering the inner game is optional. They want to skip it and jump straight to the tactics, the strategies, the hacks. But if your inner foundation is cracked, no strategy will hold. You'll always sabotage yourself at the level of your belief. But if you get your inner game right, the strategies you apply will multiply. When you align your mind, your emotions, and your actions with prosperity, you become magnetic to wealth and grounded in happiness at the same time. Let me leave you with this truth. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. If you want more wealth, become a person who can handle more wealth. If you want more happiness, become a person who chooses joy in the present moment. The outer game will always rise to meet the inner game. Master the inner first, and the outer will follow. If redefining wealth and happiness gives you clarity and mastering the inner game of prosperity gives you alignment, then the next step is perhaps the most vital, aligning your purpose with your prosperity. Because here's the truth. Money without meaning always leaves you restless, and happiness without progress always leaves you empty. You were not designed just to make a living, you were designed to make a difference. And if your pursuit of wealth is disconnected from your deeper calling, then no matter how much you accumulate, it will never feel like enough. We live in a world where people chase money without direction. They build businesses they don't love, they work jobs they can't stand, and they sacrifice their health and relationships for careers that don't align with who they are. And when they finally hit their so-called goals, they're surprised to find themselves exhausted and dissatisfied. Why? Because prosperity is not just about income, it's about impact. And impact only comes when what you do is connected to who you are. Think about it like this. Happiness flows from meaning, and wealth flows from value. When your purpose fuels your work, you naturally create more value, you think bigger, you serve deeper, you innovate more boldly. Because you're not just working for a paycheck, you're working for a mission. That's why some people seem unstoppable. They're not powered by money, they're powered by meaning. And meaning produces energy that money alone cannot buy. But let's take this deeper. Purpose is not something you find, it's something you align. Too many people waste years waiting for their big purpose to appear as if it's hiding under a rock somewhere. Purpose isn't discovered, it's decided. It's the conscious choice to connect what you're doing today with the impact you want to create tomorrow. And when you make that choice, even ordinary work becomes extraordinary because it's infused with vision. Now, purpose alone doesn't pay the bills, and prosperity without purpose feels hollow. But when you align them, you create a synergy that is both profitable and fulfilling. Imagine earning money in a way that also expresses your gifts, serves people at a high level, and advances because you care about. That's not just business, that's calling. And when calling meets commerce, you have a recipe for both wealth and happiness that compounds over time. Philosophically, this is why so many wealthy people still feel unfulfilled. They achieve the prosperity but miss the purpose. And it's also why so many well-intentioned people who are deeply connected to their purpose remain broke. They held on to meaning but rejected money, as if poverty was somehow more virtuous. Both extremes are broken. If you want to be wealthy and happy, you must marry the two. Purpose without prosperity is frustration, and prosperity without purpose is emptiness. But together, they create a life that is both impactful and abundant. And here's the beauty of this alignment. When you tie your wealth creation to your purpose, you no longer have to chase happiness. It flows naturally. Because happiness is not about indulgence, it's about congruence. The deepest joy comes not from comfort, but from contribution. From knowing that your wealth is not just buying luxuries, but building legacies. From knowing that your success is not just elevating you, but elevating others. This is why the greatest leaders and entrepreneurs often say, it's not about the money anymore. Of course, they still enjoy the benefits of prosperity, but what drives them is bigger. It's the desire to solve problems, to improve lives, to leave an imprint. And ironically, that's why their wealth keeps growing. Because when your work is fueled by purpose, you can't help but create extraordinary value. And wealth is always a reflection of the value you bring to the marketplace. So the question becomes, how do you align your purpose with your prosperity? You start by asking, what problems am I uniquely designed to solve? What gifts do I have that others need? What mission excites me enough to keep going even when it's hard? And then you build your wealth creation vehicles, your career, your business, your investments around those answers. That doesn't mean everything you do will feel like passion. It does mean that the overall trajectory of your life points toward both impact and income. When you align purpose with prosperity, you stop trading time for money and you start trading value for freedom. You stop asking, how do I make more? And start asking, how do I serve more? And the paradox is, the more you serve, the more you earn. The more you align, the more you multiply. Purpose sharpens your focus, prosperity expands your reach, and happiness becomes the natural byproduct of both. Let me leave you with this: money is powerful, but it is not ultimate. Purpose is ultimate. Money can buy options, but purpose gives direction. Money can buy comfort, but purpose gives fulfillment. If you align the two, you will not only live rich, you will live right. And that is the path to being both wealthy and happy. If redefining wealth and happiness gives us clarity, mastering the inner game gives us alignment, and connecting prosperity with purpose gives us direction, then the next step is about building the environment where both wealth and happiness can multiply relationships. Because no matter how gifted, driven, or intelligent you are, success is never a solo project. Wealth grows through people, and happiness is sustained through people. Relationships are not just accessories to your journey. They are the accelerators and the anchors. Think about this. Money flows through trust. Every dollar you have ever earned came because someone trusted you. They trusted your product, your service, your ability, or your word. Without trust, no transaction happens, and trust is built through relationship. That means your wealth is not determined only by your effort, it is determined by the quality of your relationships. Now, let's go deeper. Relationships are not just the fuel for wealth, they are the foundation for happiness. You can achieve the highest financial success, but if you have no one to share it with, the joy will evaporate quickly. Human beings are wired for connection. Meaning is multiplied in community. Joy is magnified when it is shared. Even ancient wisdom teaches us that it is not good for man to be alone. That's not just about companionship. It's about understanding that wealth without people leaves you wealthy but empty, and happiness without people leaves you happy but isolated. But not all relationships are created equal. To be wealthy and happy, you must be intentional about the relationships you build and maintain. There are relationships that drain you, and there are relationships that multiply you. There are people who pull you backward into small thinking, and there are people who propel you forward into greatness. The middle class often falls into the trap of comfort, surrounding themselves with people who validate their limitations. But if you want to elevate both your wealth and your joy, you must place yourself in environments where you are challenged to think bigger, act bolder, and grow deeper. Psychologically, we know this to be true. Your standards are shaped by your circle. If you spend most of your time around people who complain, you will normalize complaining. If your circle tolerates mediocrity, you will lower your own standards. But if you place yourself among people who live with excellence, who demand growth, who embody both prosperity and peace, you will be stretched. And that stretching, though uncomfortable, is what births transformation. Philosophically, relationships are also mirrors. They reflect back to you the truth about who you are becoming. That's why your relationships matter so much. If you surround yourself with people who celebrate growth, they will confirm your higher self. But if you surround yourself with people who are threatened by growth, they will constantly try to pull you back into who you used to be. If you want to be wealthy and happy, choose relationships that reflect and reinforce the best version of you. Now let's connect this to wealth creation directly. Wealthy people already know the power of networks. They don't just buy products, they buy access. They don't just look for information, they look for introductions. Opportunity moves at the speed of relationships. And that's why if you want to grow into the realm of wealth, you cannot just focus on working harder, you must focus on building stronger connections. One relationship with the right mentor, partner, or client can accelerate you farther than 10 years of grinding and isolation. But here's the other side of it. Happiness in relationships doesn't come from taking, it comes from giving. Wealthy and happy people understand the rhythm of reciprocity. They know that if you enter relationships only to extract value, you'll quickly be pushed away. But if you enter relationships with the intention to add value, to uplift, to support, to contribute, then those relationships deepen. And deep relationships create joy that money alone cannot buy. So how do you apply this? Start by auditing your circle. Ask yourself, who in my life challenges me to grow? Who drains my energy? Who celebrates my success without envy? Who inspires me to raise my standards? Then make the conscious choice to invest more deeply in the relationships that multiply you and release or reframe the ones that diminish you. Building wealth and happiness is not just about what you gain, it's about who you become through the people you walk with. Here's the ultimate: money will come and go, opportunities will rise and fall, but relationships are what sustain both wealth and joy. The right people will open doors you could never knock on alone. The right people will remind you of your greatness when you forget it yourself. The right people will make the journey meaningful, not just successful. So let me close this thought with something simple but powerful. Your net worth and your joy are both multiplied by your network. Build relationships not just for profit, but for purpose. Not just for gain, but for growth. Because when you walk with the right people, wealth becomes easier and happiness becomes inevitable. We've talked about redefining wealth, mastering the inner game, aligning purpose with prosperity, and building the right relationships. But all of these ideas rest on one principle that holds them together. One principle that separates those who build fleeting success from those who build enduring wealth and lasting happiness growth. Not the kind of growth that happens for a season and then stops. I'm talking about growth as a lifelong journey. Most people treat growth like an event. They think growth happens because they went to one seminar or read one book or had one breakthrough. And while those moments can ignite transformation, they are only sparks. True growth is a fire you must keep feeding, because if you don't, the natural tendency of life is to drift backwards. Stagnation is not neutral. Stagnation is decline in disguise. If you are not growing, you are shrinking. If you are not advancing, you are retreating. And that's why embracing growth as a lifestyle is not optional. It is essential. Think about wealth for a moment. Money is always in motion. It's moving through systems, through markets, through people. If you stay still in your thinking while the world around you is evolving, your position weakens. But if you commit to growing, expanding your skills, your knowledge, your ability to adapt, you stay relevant, you stay effective, you stay wealthy. The wealthiest people in the world aren't just those who got lucky once. They are the ones who learned how to evolve with every season. They refuse to stay the same because they know life itself doesn't stay the same. And the same principle applies to happiness. Happiness fades when life becomes stagnant. Human beings are wired to desire progress. There is something in your spirit that craves forward motion, something inside of you that becomes restless when you settle for comfort. You've probably felt it before. That sense that even though you have enough to get by, something in you still feels unsatisfied. That's not greed, that's growth calling. Happiness isn't found in having everything stay the same. Happiness is found in becoming more tomorrow than you were yesterday. Philosophically, growth is about aligning yourself with the truth that life is a process, not a possession. You cannot hold on to it. You cannot freeze it. You can only walk with it. When you accept that, you stop resisting change and start using it. You stop seeing challenges as interruptions and start seeing them as invitations. Growth doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you get stronger, wiser, more capable of carrying both wealth and happiness without being crushed by them. Let's bring this into the psychological realm. Your mind is a muscle. If you don't stretch it, it shrinks. Growth requires you to consistently feed your mind new ideas, to place yourself in new environments, to challenge your assumptions. And here's what happens when you embrace growth. You stop fearing failure. You realize that failure is not the opposite of growth. It is a tool of growth. Every setback becomes a stepping stone. Every obstacle becomes a teacher. The middle class often fears growth because growth means leaving behind the familiar. But the wealthy and happy embrace growth because they understand that leaving behind the familiar is the only way to enter the extraordinary. Now, practically, how do you embrace growth as a lifelong journey? You build habits that reinforce it. You surround yourself with people who stretch you. You invest in learning, not just once, but continuously. You measure yourself not only by how much money you've made, but by how much you've expanded as a person. Because here's the truth, if your wealth outpaces your growth, you will eventually lose it. That's why so many lottery winners go broke. But if your growth outpaces your wealth, you will eventually rise to match it. That's why self-made millionaires often rebuild fortunes after losing them. Growth is the anchor that sustains both prosperity and happiness. And here's the deeper spiritual reality growth keeps you humble. The moment you think you've arrived is the moment you start declining. But when you see yourself as a lifelong student, always learning, always evolving, always willing to be stretched, you stay open to greater possibilities. That humility keeps you grateful in success and resilient in setbacks. It keeps you hungry for more, not out of lack, but out of an understanding that there's always a higher level of wealth and a deeper dimension of joy. So let me bring this to a close. If you truly want to be wealthy and happy, stop looking for a finish line. Stop chasing the illusion that one day you'll arrive and everything will be perfect. Instead, embrace the journey. Commit to growing spiritually, mentally, financially, emotionally for as long as you have breath. Because when growth becomes your way of life, wealth will find you, happiness will stay with you, and your life will carry a depth of meaning that nothing and no one can take away. And here's the thought I want to leave you with: comfort is the enemy of greatness, but growth is the pathway to freedom. Choose growth every day, and you will discover that wealth and happiness are not destinations, they are companions on the journey of becoming who you were always meant to be.